Hey everyone, it's been over 2 years since I last came out with the video, but I'm DevKev and today I want to talk about the JavaScript array method every. I created a JavaScript array filter method video 2 years ago and I did not zoom in so people were having a hard time seeing what I was coding, so I will not make that mistake today. I hope this video is helpful, and if you like this content, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and if you have any questions, I will try my best to answer. I'm not that active on this channel, but I'm trying to make an effort to be active again on this channel and produce more content in 2023 and beyond. Taking a look at the Mozilla Developer Network, also known as MDN documentation, the every method tests whether all elements in the array pass the test implemented by the provided function. It returns a Boolean value. So this method is simple in that you'll either get a true or false depending if it passes your test conditions. In this example, they created a function called isBelowThreshold that has a parameter of current value. It takes the current value argument that's passed in and will check whether it's less than 40. We see an array called array1 that has the values 1, 30, 39, 29, 10, and 13. And in line 5, we take the array1, and we apply the .every method, and we pass in the function isBelowThreshold. So we're expecting these 6 numbers to be less than 40. And if we run this, it is currently true, because all these 6 numbers are less than 40. Now let's change 39 to 44, and let's see what we get. It returns false, because there's one item in this array that is not less than 40. The next example is going to be an array of objects. In our example, we're going to take a look at an array of superheroes. So here I have an array called superheroes, which is an array of objects, and inside each of these objects contains a superhero's information. We have the superhero's name and what universe they're a part of, whether it's Marvel Studios or DC. We have Batman, Shang-Chi, Spider-Man, and Iron Man. You see, every hero outside of Batman is in the Marvel universe, while Batman is in DC. Let's apply an every method to check that these superheroes are Marvel. I'm going to create a new variable called isMarvel. Take the array superheroes and we apply the every method on there. We want to give the items being passed into the callback function a descriptive name because proper naming is a very good coding habit to have. In this example, we'll call this hero because we're passing in one item at a time to be checked. We're using arrow functions in this example, so if you're not sure this is from ES6, I would definitely YouTube arrow functions JavaScript. Since we're checking for each item and each item is an object, we have access to that object. So we can take the hero.universe, check to see if it equals Marvel. So let's sum this up really quickly. I created a variable called isMarvel. So we take the superheroes array, which is an array of objects, and we apply the every method. Each item being passed in the callback, we gave a descriptive name, and in this case it's called hero. And we check that each hero's universe is equal to Marvel. So if I console log right here, is Marvel, see what we get. We get false because currently Batman is DC. If some way, somehow, Batman finds himself inside the Marvel universe, this is going to return true because all these 4 superheroes now, their universe is currently a part of Marvel. If we change this to DC, it's going to return false because none of these are DC now. If you don't like doing this inline, you can definitely move this to a separate function. In our case, we're going to create a new function called isMarvelCheck. We'll take the hero. We will see that the hero.universe is equal to Marvel. And if we do isMarvelCheck, we do this right here, return false. So you can see how we clean this up just a little bit. We took this from inline right here and we moved it to a separate function called isMarvelCheck. And now our results are false still because Batman is DC. But if we change it back to Marvel, you can see that it returns true. This example is the most common way I use the every method in a professional work setting. In this example, let's assume that someone is registering to create a simple account and needs to fill out a form. We want to check if the form is valid before we allow the user to potentially press the submit button. So here we have the form object and it contains the object keys first name, last name, age, profession, and country. We currently have someone named Tony Hawk who is a professional skateboarder trying to fill this out. I want to validate this form first before we use the every method, so I'm going to create a new function called isFormValid. So I've created a function called isFormValid and it's going to accept a parameter called form. If you're not sure about destructuring objects in JavaScript, I would definitely look that up. So we're going to destructure every object key inside the form. So we're going to take first name, last name, age, profession, and country is equal to form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to return an object, and that object contains each form value to check if it's true or false and it meets the proper validation criteria. So if I do a return statement right here, the first thing that I want to do is check that the first name is valid. So what I can do is create an object name called isFirstNameValid. So the first thing that I want to do with the isFirstNameValid is check that the first name exists and that the length of the first name is greater than 1. So we do first name and first name dot length is greater than 1. The next thing that we want to check is that the last name is valid. So we do the same thing, is last name valid. So we want to make sure that the last name exists and the last name dot length is greater than 1. And before I go any further, the reason why we destructured this is so we don't have to do form.firstname and then form.firstname.length and then form.lastname. And so if we destructure it, it's a lot cleaner and, in my opinion, it's a lot more readable. What we want to check next is that the age is valid. So we'll do is age valid. We'll check that the age exists, so it's not 0, and that the age is greater or equal to 21. The next validation check we want to perform is on the profession, so we'll do is profession valid. We'll check that the profession exists and that the profession is not a null value. The next check that we want to do is for country, so we'll do is country valid. And we'll check that the country exists and that the country is equal to USA. So this is our isFormValid function check. We check that these values exist and also whether that they have a length of greater than 1 or if the age is greater than 21, if the country matches the USA, or the profession as long as it's not null. So now that we have the isFormValid function that accepts a form parameter created and it returns an object, how are we going to check that the form is valid using the every method? Remember, the every method is applied based on an array, and we don't have an array whatsoever currently. So what we're going to do is use a JavaScript method called object.values. This method extracts the values from an object and returns it in an array. So I'm going to show you really quickly. So I'm going to console.log object.values, and then we want to invoke our isFormValid function that we created, and we want to pass in the form inside. If you look at the console, we return true for everything because currently everything in the form is valid based on our criteria. So let's change age from 54 to 19. So now that we changed the age from 54 to 19, you can see that it's currently false. And this is how we apply the every method to this array. Instead of console logging it right now, I'm going to assign this to a variable. And I'm going to call this const form valid values. And we're going to accept the object.values. And so we currently have this written out. What I'm going to do is create a variable called const form validated. And inside, we take the form valid values, which is our array of booleans, and we're going to apply the every method to it. Remember, we want to be descriptive with our name convention, so we'll call this form criteria. And we'll pass in the arrow function, and we can do form criteria is equal to true. Now I want to console log this. So let's move this here. Log form validated. It is false. Remember, currently Tony Hawk is filling out a form and his age is 19. Our validation requires that the age exists and the age is greater than 21 years old. So if I change this from 19 to 21, this is now true. If I change this to 7, it's going to be false. If I change this to back to 54, that is true. Now country, we want to check that the country is equal to USA. If it's not and we change this to Mexico, this is going to return false because our validation now failed. If we remove skateboarder and we have an empty string, it's going to return false because it currently does not exist in the validation criteria. Now, if we change this to null, it's going to be false as well. But if we go back to skateboarder and we change Tony from Tony to just T, it's going to be false because the length of this first name is not greater than 1. We did quite a few steps to get to where we needed to, but we included validation for our form that the values do exist and they meet certain criteria. We extracted this object into an array using the object.values, and we check against that array of booleans, applying the every method and making sure that the form criteria is equal to true. So now that the form is validated, we can allow the Tony Hawk to submit his form. On the front end, let's say we have a button that's currently grayed out and disabled and no one can press on it. Now that Tony Hawk has properly filled out his form, the button is now enabled and it's green and the person can click submit. If you have a better way of going about this, by all means, put it in the comments section. This is how we learn and how we grow as developers. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this content, please let me know in the comments. And also, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below. Let's help each other out, let's grow as developers, and thank you for tuning in. This is a tutorial on the JavaScript array every method.